Since ancient times, Buddhism has been known as the study of the mind and has been regarded by its followers as a guide for cultivating the body and the mind. This is because the core issue of Buddhism is the mind, which includes the analysis of all kinds of psychology, as well as the purification, improvement, and upgrading of the mind. In this sense, the practice of Buddhism is the cultivation of the mind. This is because the core issue of Buddhism is the mind, which includes the analysis of all kinds of psychology, as well as the purification, improvement, and upgrading of the mind. In this sense, the practice of Buddhism is the cultivation of the mind. Buddhism is education as well as psychology. It analyzes psychological phenomena, tells us what is a healthy state of mind and what are the symptoms of disease, and describes specific methods of treatment. In the Buddhist scriptures, the relationship between the Buddha and sentient beings is often compared to that of a doctor and a patient, and the Buddha is called the King of Healers because he is able to distinguish the symptoms of illnesses, understand the nature of medicines, and give medicines according to the illnesses so that all people are happy to be convinced. So why are all beings referred to as patients? Are we all sick? It must be realized that this disease is not a physical disease, but a mental disease. In Buddhism, the definition of mental illness is greed and anger. This is different from the psychological definition. From the psychological point of view, those psychological problems that are different from normal people and bring about various obstacles are included in the category of diseases. As for greed, anger, and dementia, which are common to all human beings, they are not included in their treatment. In the view of Buddhism, as long as we are not free from the three poisons of greed, anger, and dementia, we are not healthy in the true sense of the word, and we are all patients in the cycle of rebirth. The Buddha was once such a patient, but through his spiritual practice, he eventually broke his worries and realized his awareness, becoming a conscious person who penetrated the truth of life. Dharma is the method that the Buddha found and relieved greed and anger. So, Dharma is a cure for mental illness, and practicing is a process of curing it. Point 1. The Four Noble Truths. Dharma. In Buddhism, there are many ways to treat psychological problems, and there are 84,000 Dharma doors in the scriptures. In the face of such a large number of Dharma doors, how can we effectively enter and swim in the sea of Dharma? Is there a basic outline for the vast and profound Dharma? After the Buddha initially attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he summarized his practice as the Four Noble Truths of suffering, setting, destruction, and path. Based on his own experience of practice, the problems that existed in his life, and the methods of solving them. This was established by the Buddha on the basis of the process of healing by doctors at that time. When a doctor is confronted with a sick person, the first step is to make a truthful diagnosis. The second step is to find out the root cause of the disease. The third step is to evaluate the results of the treatment and to know what the state of health will be after the treatment. And the last step is to provide an effective treatment program. This is the basic principle of Buddhist psychotherapy. The Four Noble Truths in turn contain twofold cause and effect, the cause and effect of reincarnation and the cause and effect of liberation. Reincarnation and liberation are the central concerns of Indian culture. Indians generally believe that life is an endless cycle of reincarnation, which is full of troubles and sufferings and full of unfreedom and insouciance. Therefore, the ultimate problem that Indian philosophy and religion seeks to solve is to go from recognizing the cycle of rebirth to terminating it. The Indians call this liberation, that is, the termination of this continuation of life, which is full of confusion and trouble. The whole of Buddhism addresses this problem, which is divided into two main parts. The first is the correct interpretation of the cycle of rebirth, that is, the Four Noble Truths of suffering and setting. And the second is to point out the way of liberation beyond the cycle of rebirth, that is, the Four Noble Truths of destruction and the way. The second is to point out the way of liberation beyond the cycle of rebirth, that is, the Four Noble Truths, namely, suffering and setting. The term suffering describes the pain of life. The term set describes the origin of suffering. Only by facing up to reality and finding the root causes can we actually relieve suffering. Just as in the case of treating a disease, it is necessary to understand the symptoms and causes of the disease before it is possible to prescribe the right medicine. If we fail to treat the symptoms, even if we take more medicines and treat the disease for a longer period of time, it will not be helpful, and it will even aggravate the situation. Buddhism says that life is suffering, and some people therefore misunderstand that Buddhism is pessimistic and negative. I once posted a tweet on this issue. The essence of life is free and happy, and it is only because of confusion that life has all sorts of troubles and suffering. So Buddhism says that life is suffering. Once the confusion and worries are stopped, life will be restored to its original purity, freedom, and happiness. The reason why I say suffering refers to the current state of mortal life. In this life full of confusion, no matter how many superficial and temporary pleasures there may be, its essence is still suffering. Why is this so? Because true pleasure is pleasuring, no matter when it is enjoyed or how long it is enjoyed. Do we find such happiness in this world? What we call happiness is only a temporary equilibrium when a need is met. If there is no need to be satisfied, or if we get more than we can bear, the balance is broken and pleasure turns to pain. In fact, equilibrium is temporary, while imbalance is permanent. In Buddhism, another way of expressing ecstasy is ignorance. It is like a foggy day that prevents one from seeing the truth of life and the truth of the world. Because of this inability to see clearly, one will have a misperception of oneself and a misperception of the world. In turn, one will also cling to such misunderstandings, causing life to continually create worries and create suffering. It can be said that the confusion of life is the perpetual motion machine that creates suffering. Therefore, according to Buddhism, life based on ignorance and confusion is suffering. This is the cause and effect of rebirth. To resolve suffering, we need to find the root cause of the suffering and also know the state of health after healing. In the Four Noble Truths, extinction tells us the state of being after the confusion has been lifted and the worries have been extinguished, which is called nirvana in Buddhism. This is the silence after all agitation has subsided, the deep, ultimate, all-pervasive silence. This silence radiates joy in a constant stream. So, what method is needed to relieve suffering? The way of suffering, setting, and destruction tells us the way. Therefore, the twofold cause and effect of the Four Noble Truths Dharma doctrine is to talk about the result first, and then look for the cause. First, seeing the reality of suffering and knowing that a life based on confusion is full of suffering. Second, to realize that this suffering comes from life's own confusion and troubles. Third, know that the healthy state of life is one of awakening, freedom, and joy, and that is nirvana. Finally, understand the way towards nirvana. Although there are numerous sects of Buddhism, The views on the perception of suffering and the causes of suffering are basically the same. And among the different means of solving the problem, the core is centered around the Eightfold Path, which are right view, right thinking, right speech, right karma, right destiny, right refinement, right mindfulness, and right determination. Of these, 3 parts are included, namely precepts and wisdom. The first part is right view, which belongs to wisdom, that is to recognize the world truthfully and objectively. According to Buddhism, correct understanding leads to wisdom, while wrong understanding will lead to troubles. In other words, all troubles are caused by wrong understanding, and it is only through the culture of wisdom and the establishment of right view that troubles can be eradicated and the truth arrived at. Therefore, in the practice of all sects, right view is the first thing to be emphasized. For example, the Buddhist doctrine of karma, the doctrine of impermanence and non-self, and the doctrine that all sentient beings have the Buddha nature are all correct views of different sects. According to the guidance of these views, we can enter the practice of Buddhism from different perspectives and achieve bodhicitta. The second part is right speech, right karma, and right livelihood, which belongs to the precepts, that is, right speech, right actions, and rightful occupation, and helps us to establish a healthy lifestyle. Why are people's hearts so confused nowadays? Why is the ecological environment deteriorating today? In fact, it has much to do with our existing lifestyle. According to Buddhism, a simple and healthy lifestyle is the very important foundation for us to establish a good mindset and create a harmonious ecological environment. The third part is right view and right determination, which belongs to the content of determination, meditation. After having the right view, one needs to transform this concept into the realization of mindfulness through meditation. In life, there are quite a few people who, after studying religion or philosophy, also acquire a lot of knowledge and speak eloquently, full of wisdom, but nothing will change in their doings. Why? It is because these truths have not been integrated into the heart, and they are not based on solving life's problems, let alone practicing and seeking proof with one's life. In that case, even if one learns more, one is only adding a bit of cultural packaging, and one's inner state of mind and qualities remain the same, with no enhancement whatsoever. And the key to transforming the right view into the power of the mind lies in meditation. In short, all Buddhist practices are inseparable from the precepts, also known as the 3 Noble Truths. This core is implemented through the Noble Eightfold Path, thereby calming the confusing worries inherent in life. In Buddhism, the complete cessation of worries is referred to as nirvana, or the ultimate in rebirth, -2. Sound-hearing vehicle and bodhisattva vehicle. There are sound-hearing vehicle and bodhisattva vehicle Buddhist practices. The former is to send out the centrifugal force and achieve personal liberation. It favors the cessation of negative forces in practice, such as preaching impermanence, suffering, and emptiness, focusing on negativity. When we only see this side, we may think that Buddhism is more negative, but realize that what this negativity reveals is the very truth of the world. We expect everything related to me to be eternal, when in fact, everything is in a state of impermanent change. We aspire to the pleasures of the world's 5 desires, when in fact, these desires are painful in nature. We think that everything is real, when in fact there is no single unchanging entity in the world at all. Everything is just a combination of conditions, an illusion of cause and effect. The Bodhisattva yantra, on the other hand, not only has the negation of negativity, but also emphasizes positive enlightenment, believing that there are two dimensions to life: a life of suffering unfolding from ignorance and confusion, and a life of happiness enlightened by inner awareness. Therefore, Mahayana Buddhism speaks of the great majesty of the Pure Land, of the Bodhisattva's endless compassionate wishes, and of the need to benefit sentient beings for all eternity. And this kind of openness and compassion fills life with hope and is deeply inspiring. This is the difference between the sound-hearing vehicle and the Bodhisattva vehicle in terms of cultivation. In addition, the sound-hearing vehicle believes that nirvana is the end of cultivation. As long as one eliminates the confusing troubles in one's life, what has been done, and there is nothing more that must be done. But for the Bodhisattva Hinayana practitioner, not only does he or she have to get out of the cycle of rebirth and move towards awakening, but he or she also has to help all sentient beings to move towards awakening. That is why the Hirsayana and the Bodhisattva Sayana are also known as the Mahayana and the Hinayana. The so-called Hinayana is like a vehicle. Some vehicles can only hold one person, while others can lead an infinite number of beings from this shore of rebirth to the other shore of awakening. And 3, cause and effect. The principle of Buddhist treatment of mental illness is cause and effect, which is also the Buddhist explanation of the world. This is also the Buddhist explanation of the world. It does not come from logical deduction, nor does it come from thinking and meditating, but it is the wisdom of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, which penetrates the reality of all dharmas. The Buddha told us in the Avalokiteshvara Sutra, there is a cause and a cause for the collection of worldly causes, and there is a cause and a cause for the extinction of the world. That is to say, any phenomenon in this world is the result of the harmony of karma, and is caused by such is the cause and such is the effect. In addition, in the Buddha's teachings, there are these 4 sentences. This is there, therefore it is there. This is born, therefore it is born. This is not there, therefore it is not there. This is extinguished, therefore it is extinguished. Because a certain cause appears, a certain result arises. If a certain cause disappears, the corresponding result disappears. In the same way, we have to find the crux of a problem in order to address it in a targeted way. For life problems, we also have to use this principle. For example, in the case of the solution to suffering, it can be said that all 5,000 years of human civilization have been trying to get rid of suffering and to pursue happiness. To put it in Buddhist terms, it is to get rid of suffering and achieve happiness. This is the common goal of all civilizations, including science and technology, as well as literature, art, philosophy, and even religion. In the past 100 years, material civilization has developed by leaps and bounds, and we have living conditions that were unimaginable in the past. However, the suffering of modern people has not been reduced, and on the contrary, they are living a more tiring and troublesome life. Tiredness, because too much desire, so they compare each other, insatiable. Trouble, because too much obsession, so suffer from loss, heavy pressure. It can be seen that only improve the external environment cannot fundamentally solve the problem. No matter how much effort is put into it, it is just a show of raising the soup to stop the boil, rather than a cure of the root cause. In addition to excessive desires, misconceptions are one of the sources of suffering. According to Buddhism, reason is a double-edged sword. The word knowledge is both the door to all wonders and the root of all evils. Throughout history, those deep hatred, bloody killings, brutal wars, etc., are all caused by misconceptions. it can be seen that misconceptions not only bring suffering to individuals, but also bring great disasters and even destructive blows to human beings. Asceticism. In the course of spiritual practice, without the guidance of right views, the approach adopted cannot be effective. In traditional Indian religion, asceticism and meditation are universally revered. In the Buddhist scriptures, there are many accounts of what the ascetic layman did, and they really tortured their bodies in every way possible. This has been practiced even to this day. For example, one ascetic monk raised his hands for 37 years and never lowered them. They believe that after torturing the color in this way, desires will not arise, thus purifying the body and mind and leaving the cycle of rebirth. In addition, they also attach great importance to the practice of meditation, believing that in meditation they can subdue their desires and reach a state beyond the earthly realm. Back then, the Buddha also tried these methods and practiced asceticism for 6 years, while his meditation efforts also reached the highest level at that time. In the end, he realized that all these solutions were like a stone pressing down on grass. When people are exhausted because of austerities or enjoy meditation because of meditation, desire will indeed be temporarily dormant. But it is not dissolved, it is not rooted out, and like withered weeds, once the time comes, they will grow again in the spring breeze. Therefore, merely suppressing it from the outside is not a complete solution. What the Buddha teaches us is to explore the real causes of suffering so as to find a cure and treat the symptoms, which is an important Buddhist idea for solving psychological problems. This principle sounds very simple and seems to be known to everyone. However, without a thorough understanding of life, it is difficult to find out where the disease lies, and often we are just beating around the bush, treating the head when there is a headache, and treating the foot when there is a footache. It's always the headache, always the pain, and never the day of healing. 4. Buddha's significant discovery. When the Buddha witnessed under the Bodhi tree, he discovered that every living being has the potential for enlightenment and the ability to save themselves, and that they can accomplish self-healing of their lives. Because life is originally pure, happy, and free, it is only confounded by ignorance that it is upside down and dreamy and troubled. In my opinion, this discovery is more important than any other discovery in the history of science because it brings hope to life. From a psychotherapeutic point of view, this discovery is like a pill that makes us realize that no matter how many problems, troubles, and sufferings we have now, as long as we are willing to change, there is a bright future for us. This is because our nature is pure rather than tainted, complete rather than crippled, and free rather than in need of dependence. The core of the practice of the Bodhisattva Yoga is to guide us to develop the potential for enlightenment inherent in our lives. In the Dharma Flower Sutra, spoken by the Buddha in his later years, he tells us, "The Buddhas appeared in the world for one great cause. This mission is to enable all sentient beings to be enlightened into the knowledge of the Buddha, that is to say, to guide all sentient beings to open up, to discover, to realize, and to achieve wisdom like that of the Buddha. Because this wisdom is in everyone's heart, it is a treasure that we are already endowed with. What the practice does is to develop it and use it, thus accomplishing the self-healing of life. From the Buddhist point of view, a truly healthy person is one who, on the one hand, has completely eliminated confusion and worry, and, on the other hand, has fully developed the potential for enlightenment. This potential is the great wisdom and great compassion that are indistinguishable from the Buddhas of the three worlds. When this quality is fully enlightened, we become like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In this sense, oneself is the best healer.